What up, guys and girls? It's Bobby.
And Sean.
And we have, for the first time on the Cronus Cast,
James.
James is here. We're here. We're back for a week's episode of the Cronus Cast. This week's episode is brought to you guys by 10,000. Use the code Cronus15 for 15% off. And then a portion of that will come to help us at Cronus Fit. Big fan of the shirts. I've been wearing the shirts a lot when I've been working out. Highly recommended. The versatile shirt is really a nice shirt to wear.
Yeah, and trying out the new tactical line of shirts that they're coming out with. Super comfortable. A couple different materials I think that they're using, but I've been working out in it all week and it's great. Again, we don't buy Lululemon now, so
no anti-Lululemon.
Anti-Lululemon.
But yeah. So I guess since James is on for this week, I guess James, you want to introduce yourself, say a little something about kind of your background, and then we can kind of transition into a little bit more nutrition center talk.
Yeah. So I'm living in Maryland right now, and so I'm a dietetics student at Kansas State University. So I'm studying to be a registered dietitian, and I have a few certifications like nutrition related. One from NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and the other one from Clean Health Fitness Institute. And I'm also the coach for Cronus Fit. So if you see that we offer nutrition coaching now, I'm the guy that does that. Also the articles that are released, haven't released one in a few weeks now, but you probably saw on Instagram those get released here and there. So I'm also the guy that writes those articles too. So yeah.
That's awesome. A big question though. Do you pronounce Baltimore Balmore, and are you a Ravens fan?
I'm not a Ravens fan. I'm actually a Broncos fan. But if you live in Baltimore, yeah, you pronounce it that way, Balmore or whatever the fuck. But I don't say it like that.
Well, Bobby and I are Eagles fans, so I guess that's fine not being an Eagles fan. But you're not a Baltimore fan, so that's fine too.
Yeah.
I do like the Ravens. Not gonna lie, fun team to watch.
Yeah, I think what's the field up? Not M&T Bank. Was it M&T Bank?
It is M&T.
Yeah. I like the harbor down Baltimore, crab cakes and like really mediocre football.
So I guess we get a lot of questions pretty much every week about nutrition. So what are some things that for James, kind of some misconceptions that you see tossed around that are kind of common misconceptions that always come floating your way?
I think one is the importance of meal timing. So a lot of times people ask like, oh, carbs at a certain time, usually like around nighttime. In general, meal timing is probably the least of your worries. Maybe after you establish, good fundamental dietary habits, you're consistently hitting your macro targets, or you're intuitively eating maybe, and your weight is doing what you want it to do, like lose weight, gain weight, whatever, maintain. Once you have, all the main things in place and you're able to adhere to your way of eating, then you can look more into timing your meals out. You could argue the field of chrononutrition, which is basically like meal timing according to like your circadian rhythm. That area of research is fairly new, and the idea that there's an optimal way to time your meals, or you get some sort of better benefit out of having more calories at a certain time or less calories at a certain time, it's negligible. So I think in just generally speaking, meal timing, usually like talking about like carbs before bed or slaying protein after a workout, it's nowhere near of as much importance as some of the other things that I mentioned earlier. So that's definitely one.
Yeah, I was gonna say like for that aspect, I've always remembered seeing like that infographic or the graphic of like the pyramid of like nutrition. At the base of your pyramid is like your just calories. Base of the pyramid is calories. That's your most important. The next level is like macronutrient breakdown. On top of that is like like micronutrients. Top of that is like timing, and top of that like supplements. So like for the vast majority, I think it's like calories and macronutrients takes up like 80% of what your overall nutrition comes down to.
Yeah, and to be honest, I would say that like for most people that are probably listening to this, like that's gonna be most of it right there. Is like adhering to your macros and calories. The last little bit you gain out of like optimal timing of like your meals or supplements, it's negligible. And honestly, unless you're stepping on stage or you're like some sort of professional athlete, it's probably not worth the extra hassle or the potential compromise to adherence, because those things matter. That matters more. But if you want to, if you have everything down and you have the extra energy and you want to go for it, sure, you could do it. But it definitely don't put that in front of the other more fundamental important things.
Yeah, it's like the like the 98th percentile, that little bit of extra.
So like say you're like in peak physical performance shape, just like a human specimen. I'll thinking off the top of my head, me. Um, like for average people though out there that aren't godly and they're mortals, is there a benefit to like before PT, for instance, eating a banana with peanut butter, or are there small things that you can do that maybe aren't representative of a whole meal that you would recommend, or is that something that they should not worry about either?
So like, yeah, in general, like when it comes to like food selection, I mean, it depends on what it's made up of, like the macros and micros. So specific food selection isn't it. It's not like there are certain foods that are better. It just depends on what they're made up of. So like in your example, like a peanut butter and banana, like you could substitute that for something that's also carbs and fats, and that would probably work just as well. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be like that specific. It just depends on, like what the foods are made up of. And that kind of gives you more flexibility too. So, yeah.
So like because that's a common question that we get is like people always ask us like what should I eat before I work out, or I'm waking up in the morning, early morning to go to PT, like what should I eat? Usually I prefer like something light, like a piece of fruit, or like something like a piece of toast or something, just a little bit something. Or I generally speaking I don't eat anything before I work out, but a lot of people like to have something before they work out. What do you think is a good meal or snack or something before?
Yeah. So, this is like extremely individually dependent. It comes down to mainly goals and preferences, I would say would be the two top things. But well, first of all, let's get one thing straight. The evidence on like pre-workout meals is very mixed. So you have a lot of studies that say that like training fasted actually has the same performance as with a meal, and I think that just goes to show that it's individually dependent. But so if you feel like you're a person that does better with a meal, typically mixed carbohydrate sources, and this is just coming from like a purely mechanistic point of view. But yeah, so that would be mixed carbohydrate sources, so like complex and simple carbohydrates to utilize like different transporter rates so you get more sustained energy, and then just some protein, and then ideally low fats because that just slows down digestion. So you want it to, kind of kick in quickly. So that could be, like I said, there are no specific foods for that. It could be anything that fits those parameters, I guess. So typically, what I like is like a piece of fruit as like the simple carb source, and then any starch source, so like rice, pasta, potato, bread, whatever, and then just like whatever protein source you want. So like meat, a whey shake. A common question I see uh, on the Instagram is, like I train early in the morning and I don't have that much time like for food to digest or whatever, and I just need something like quick and light. So for that situation, I think like just something you can't go wrong with would be like a whey shake, a piece of fruit, and then just like maybe some sort of starch source like a granola bar or like a small cup of oats or a banana. Um, but yeah, you don't need to get too complicated with it because again, this is the kind of falling back to that pyramid. The base of the pyramid is like your total targets for the day. So you're talking about a very small difference here in whether or not you hit the best pre-workout meal for yourself or not. But yeah, and it also depends on what you like too, because that matters too. So pick stuff that you would, somewhat enjoy too. Um, but yeah, so no need to overcomplicate it.
And I know James and Dr. Bobby here, the experts on a lot of the language you just heard. I'll take the culinary side of the house. Do not microwave a piece of cantaloupe with rice.
Oh my God, what the
I'm just saying,
Hang on.
people are listening to us. He said fruit and some starch. I'm just saying I wouldn't put the two together like that. I would not microwave my rice with my fruit. So for anyone out there that might have been confused by the mechanized language, you're thinking maybe a Bradley. I'm letting you know, don't microwave them together.
Yeah, also like personally speaking, I always train fasted. Like today, for example, I woke up, drank some coffee, and then hopped on the bike for a 45-minute bike ride. That works for me. Like I've never eaten before working out almost ever, and that seems to work for me. But definitely, your mileage might vary.
Yeah, I try not to eat either. Like before, I swam this morning. Definitely not before running. I just like hate running on any kind of stomach like that's got anything in it, because I feel like within 5 to 6 miles, I'm looking for somewhere to go to the bathroom, which is like the worst feeling. And on the bike, I'll generally eat during my bike rides, and try to get like 25% ish of the calories that I'm going to burn throughout the course. But yeah, eating on a full stomach, I mean, working out on any kind of stomach, like full or half, has always been kind of something I've steered away from, just because like I don't want part of my workout being dedicated to figuring out why my belly hurts.
Yeah. So I think that's another thing that people also need to consider is like how you're going to feel too, because you might think like, oh, calories in my body, more energy, gonna perform better. But like a lot of times people, this is very individually dependent again. Sometimes when people have like carbs, like right before they work out, they'll just get like a massive like a blood glucose response, and they kind of like crash in the middle of their workout. So that's just something to consider too. In that case, you may be probably better off with no calories, even though you feel like those calories would help with energy. It's going to end up making you feel worse. So
What about the crowd of people that you see in the gym with like, a gallon thing of water, and they're putting some sort of powder into it? I don't know whether it's like protein or like a BCAA mix. What do you recommend for people out there that want something during the workouts? Is there a good answer for that? Or, is it something along the same lines that you say, like focus on the base of this pyramid?
yeah. So again, it comes down to the base of the pyramid, but if you really want to spend your money, you could do EAAs, but would that provide you uh, an additional benefit? Like, will that actually put on more muscle or enhance recovery or do anything like that? Probably not really if you're just getting enough protein in general. If you train fasted, then you could probably benefit from maybe a carb or protein or both shake during your workout, just to decrease muscle protein breakdown and just give you something, some form of energy. And same for like if you train for like long periods of time. So if you're training for like, I don't know, like 2 hours or more, then you would probably benefit from some carbs during your workout. And there is actually a lot of studies that show benefit from that, and not just from carb consumption, but actually there have been studies where they literally just swish like a Gatorade or a sugar sweetened beverage in the subject's mouth. Like they just gargle it, they spit it out, and then it actually improves their performance. So if you're dieting, maybe that's something you could
I
do.
know.
But yeah, so for long workouts or fasted workouts, maybe you could consider like some carbs or protein in a shake during your workout.
It's actually, I actually know about the biochemical mechanism for that. It's like a neurobiological chemical link. Basically, once you have like sugar in your mouth, it releases a hormone called GLP-1, which is similar to glucagon, which it gives your body, like pumps your body, makes your body think that you're eating sugar, so your body increases like the insulin release and helps like
Yeah.
increase the blood sugar levels, which is why like IV, if you do like glucose through the IV, it's not as efficient as glucose through the mouth.
Right.
We've been doing this
Sidebar.
podcast for how many years? And this is the most scientific, like probably what people want to hear about the most. God, I am so sorry. I am so out of my league with you two.
Yeah, and then I guess we can. What else is our comments? We talk about like diets. I guess people always ask us like, what's the best diet for them? Like carnivore, keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, what have you.
Oh,
What
people
is
are super opinionated too. Like we've seen some responses
Religion.
of like, this is just wrong. You can't put this out.
Yeah, we have some people like try and like DM us saying like, I would love to debate you on veganism. And we're just like, dude, not that big a deal. So
Yeah.
let's get your take, James, on the diets and the diet fanatics out there.
Yeah. So for me, like any diet, all diets out there are like pretty restrictive in nature. And when you look at them, there's, they're either cutting out macros or cutting out food groups. The only one, and I'm not even sure if you would really call this a diet, that's not, is kind of like flexible dieting, in my opinion, but I'm biased to that because that's obviously what I do. But so yeah, so the best diet for you, and I wrote an article on this, so you could look. It's called like the what's the best fat loss diet. It's on the website, but basically it comes down to the one that you can stick to the best, because no matter what this, so there are a couple of reasons for that. No matter how effective a diet is, and I'm not saying one diet is more effective than another, and I'll come back to that, but if you can't adhere to it, then it's not going to be effective. So you need to be able to actually work it. And you hear people say this like, oh, I've tried keto, I've tried fasting, or I've tried this and that, and I didn't lose weight. Well, that's like saying, uh, I went to school, I did the work, and I got a D. Well, it's probably because you didn't exactly do it right, you know? So, and another thing is that when they compare diets in varying macronutrients, or keto with paleo, or Atkins, or whatever, um, there was a study where they compared like 14 different diets, and they all pretty much lost close, like within 1 or 2 pounds of the same amount of weight. So it goes to show that there really wasn't a diet that was more superior than another. So it just comes down to what you can adhere to, and that'll come down to, some form of active restriction, something you're willing to sacrifice because you're not going to get anywhere if nothing changes, and then just tailoring it to your preferences. And I think it doesn't have to be a diet. It doesn't have to be keto or paleo. It could just be like, kind of like whatever fits your macros, or like flexible dieting or whatever. It doesn't have to have a name. It could just be like your own way of eating. It could be like, a mix of uh like it could be like a vegetarian diet where you eat dairy. There's actually a name for this, but like it could be a vegetarian diet where you eat fish, lean meats, and dairy. And if that's something that works for you, and like cutting out red meat and other stuff like that, other animal products, then that's totally fine. So it doesn't have to have like a diet or a name attached to it. It's just whatever you can stick to best that actively restrict performing some sort of cognitive restraint. Something's got to go, and then tailoring it to your preferences, kind of.
Yeah, like I've talked about a lot in the past about like intermittent fasting, and I found over the years that intermittent fasting that works pretty well for me. Like I usually, like when I'm working pretty hard, I only eat for like 4 or 5 hours a day. That works well for me. Like yesterday, I got 2 workouts in, like worked out for like 2.5 hours on a completely fasted state, and that just works for me. But definitely doesn't work for everybody, and same thing with like the other diets. Like we are saying, it boils down to like calories and macros, and if it works for you, it works for you. You know.
We
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
hearing stuff too. Like I think Joe Rogan promoted like for a month, all he ate was red meat and eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Carnivore.
I would wonder if these diets aren't somehow related to the industries that they promote. They didn't have, so for the carnivore diet, whether you've got some beef uh, conglomerate or corporation like pushing this kind of study, or Atkins. How much in your experience, James, do you think that an industry impacts the way that we see diet culture? I know we have like Weight Watchers and all these other programs, but do you think there's more pressure from larger corporations, or do you think this is just someone sitting in the room that comes up with a cool, unique way to eat food?
No, it's definitely that. And that's a huge limitation in like nutritional science. Um, so it's not uncommon to see, studies that say eggs are beneficial coming out from the egg industry. And, there was a recent meta-analysis that showed it was completely cherry picked, but it was basically came from some university in Texas that was getting funded from the beef industry, the cattle industry, and it was basically saying that like red meat reduces your risk of heart disease. So that's like a huge, yeah. There's a lot of it's like pressure to publish, and also just industry funding plays a large role in the studies that are produced, and that kind of trickles down into the diets that get popularized. This study says, this diet, or this way of eating, or this food is going to do this for you, it has this health benefit or whatever. So and I mean, you have that with like pretty much everything. There's always going to be some sort of like bias or industry funding, but that definitely plays a huge role. And I think that it's just hard to find, most nutrition like experts or gurus or like people you find on YouTube or whatever. Most of them they're heavily biased to their way of eating, and some of it's due to like financial gain. But yeah, so there's always like there's a large amount of bias, and people, it's kind of like a religion now. People are so stuck to their way of eating, and they want to push it so badly that they cherry pick, and they go as far as like falsifying data and stuff like that. So yeah, it plays a huge role in like the the diets that get popularized, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I remember like in the 80s, 90s, it was like fat was the enemy, and like and like carbs are good for you. And then like now it's like all the like dairy and like meat producers are saying like fat's good for you now, and like carbs are bad for you, and like Coca-Cola is like funding research about like like sugars and stuff. So it's just all kind of muddled. I think ultimately, if you eat a whole balance, like a whole diet that's not full in like processed foods, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean that's not that's not wrong at all. That's pretty accurate. But it does kind of boil down to a lot of like nitpickiness, like getting really specific. But what you just said, if like Americans just did that, they would be a lot healthier, without having to like overcomplicate it or getting into anything too crazy or specific. I think like one of the best rules is just practice balance and moderation, because I can assure you, um, pretty much, well, most people listening to this, I guarantee you, they could fit any food in their diet and reach their goal and be healthy or whatever. It is very individually dependent, but for most people, they can. What I just said applies to them. They could pretty much fit any food in as long as they practice some, moderation and balance within their diet, and focus on the whole picture, and not just like, is eating this steak gonna is eating steak gonna be bad for me or something. Just the whole composition of your diet, not just like focusing on like a single macronutrient or a single food or whatever.
Yeah, but I want to eat my McDonald's and eat my ice cream too, so that's what I want to do.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's really frustrating, and we've seen, I mean, for like the last couple of years, people will reply, it's like we've got, Dr. Bobby here, and he'll say something medically related, and people will sometimes not comment. But then we'll go into something about diet or nutrition. And James, do you find it like super frustrating? Like you are becoming an expert in this field when someone reads one or two articles and tries to like rebuff something that you say? Because like I would be really annoyed by these like, almost influencers that are sitting out there that they've found one thing that works for them. And then they expect that people will just take it as gospel. And if anyone has a different opinion, even if they're experts in that field, they're like, no, 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 I've done the research. So like, can you talk about maybe like how long it takes to develop some of your methodology when it comes to diet and nutrition, and where people would have major shortfalls in just reading one or two articles and relying exclusively on that?
Yeah, so that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, by the way. And that's not uncommon, because everyone eats, so everyone feels like they have like their opinion holds value, so they think they know what they're talking about. But yeah, expertise, like to be honest, I'm not even sure if I don't think I'd consider myself an expert, just because I have such a high standard for that word. But expertise takes many years to develop, and especially when you're talking about something as vast and involving as nutrition, it's not only you have to look at the data, but also you also have to have that foundation of the mechanisms and how all that works. And that's something that you don't get from just like reading a cherry picked article. And And that's another thing. These people that do have these, who are these kind of like arrogant people that think they figured it out after reading an article or two, they don't realize it, but they haven't looked everywhere. So they haven't like gotten the full picture. So they haven't, done like full research on a topic. It's just kind of like, I guess, cognitive dissonance. Like they just kind of, take the first thing that comes their way and they think they haven't figured it out. But I guarantee you it's much more complicated than that. And even when you read about some things like, oh, red meat causes cancer, it's from TMAOs or heterocyclic amines, it's a lot more complicated than that. And, people could draw those conclusions and will say things like that. But there's a lot more that goes into it than just like those two chemical compounds. But so, yeah, it's basically just a lot more complicated than people see it as. And a lot of times people think like nutrition is like a soft science. I mean, it's really not. There's a lot of chemistry and biology involved. So it's just not as simple as people make it out to be.
Yeah, my sister tried to do it this Christmas when she watched Game Changers for the first time, like, a year after it came out, and was scolding my parents for their, choice of diet. And I just sat there like, you watched an hour and a half long movie where they highlighted like 3 different athletes. And now all of a sudden, I think she tries to eat as much as she can to be vegan, which is like 99% of the month. But it's like, I've done the diet before, but I've never been one to be like, this is the only way. There can only be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue I have with like Game Changers and the vegan diet in general is like people, especially nowadays, like the meat alternatives, like you see in the grocery store, all the like meat alternatives are like terrible for you. It's like ultra processed, like soy protein, all this other junk that they just somehow add and make it have a texture of meat and flavor of meat. Which I mean, sure, if you're trying to like substitute for like a burger once a week, maybe not terrible for you, but that stuff ultimately is not good for you.
Well, yeah, they did that thing in South Park where it was like, I'm a goo man. And then Cartman loves it because he finds out, that all the vegan food is super processed, just like the stuff that he's been eating for years.
So yeah, that's my thing on vegan food. Ultra processed. Anything that's ultra processed is probably not good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we hit a little bit about diets. What else can we talk about? Supplements.
Oh, supplements. Lovely.
Let's talk about supplements.
So again, this is like at the top of the pyramid, and this is something that people like tend to prioritize when they, should be prioritizing other stuff. But there really isn't any there. Well, okay, let me back up here. The majority of the evidence on supplements shows that most of them, the vast majority, are not that effective. And the only ones that really have a lot of evidence for their benefits are like caffeine, creatine, and then a tier below those would be like maybe beta alanine and citrulline malate. And then with beta alanine, citrulline malate, you're talking about like, again, it'll make a very small difference, and it's money you got to spend on it. So you have to kind of weigh it against that. Is it going to be worth it? But yeah, for the most part, you would be better off just like having a better diet, focusing on your diet, your training, your sleeping. I think sleep is super underrated, and not enough people prioritize that. They will, ask about supplements when they're sleeping like 6 hours a night or something. So that's something that should be fixed before you start venturing off into supplements. But yeah, and then so in general, it's just like, is it really worth like that extra tiny bit of benefit you get? And another thing is like, I've experimented with a lot of even the supplements that do have evidence for them, and you just don't really notice that much of a difference unless you're talking about caffeine and creatine, which are the only ones that have like large bodies of evidence to support them. So anything beyond that, it's just like, you could spend the money on it, but is it really going to make a difference? Maybe, but you probably wouldn't even be able to see it, to be honest. So just consider that next time you ask about supplements.
Yeah, also like supplements, the ones that I always say, like my top 5 are like whey protein or some kind of protein source, creatine, caffeine, and then I personally like to supplement vitamin D, since a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. and then fish oil, like my big five that I always talk about.
Yeah, I was actually sorry. So I was only thinking about like performance related supplements, but I definitely agree on the vitamin D and fish oil. Somebody actually asked about fish oil yesterday, and that's just yeah, fish oil is good just for like getting in the
Health.
essential fats, overall health. And then vitamin D, like you said, most people are deficient in it, and it seems like the evidence shows that you can go actually pretty well above the RDA and get good benefits from it. So, and especially now with COVID, I think there was a few studies that showed that it improves the response, like the symptoms to COVID too. So that's just something also to consider. And then like even something like a multivitamin, I wouldn't even bother fucking with. I think just that more food, more vegetables or organ meats, if you're into that, would be a better investment than any multivitamin. So like the benefits for a multivitamin, there are like none. There are no benefit. There are no documented benefits from a multivitamin in research, but there are tons from fruits and vegetables. So they are not the same. So just getting your fruits and veggies, forget about the multivitamin.
Yeah, so like people always ask us about like the greens and the red, like juice supplements and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
the greens. I hate those questions because it's like it's all marketing and there's really no. I mean, like eating like a bunch, like drinking like processed like green powder is not the same thing as eating like a bunch of kale or carrots.
Yeah, the major problem I have with those products is a lot of them don't have fiber first, like they're super low in fiber. They don't have the fiber that you would be getting from an equivalent serving of vegetables. And sometimes they don't even have the micronutrients, all the micronutrients listed on the label, because you're not required to list all the micronutrients on a like a nutrition label. So like it's just I'm like, are you actually even getting the full serving of vegetables, or are you just getting like dehydrated green powder? So yeah, but even if you are getting the full serving of vegetables, I have a hard time believing that it'll provide the same benefits as eating actual fruits and vegetables. But that would
Don't
be in
tell
a
that to the advertisers on Fox News because every other ad I see is like, we've taken all of your favorite fruits and vegetables and put them down into these 3 simple pills that you have to take 6 times a day. And we just took the water out. So you are getting all the benefits of broccoli and cucumber. And so they're making a killing in that industry.
the supplement industry in general is making a killing.
Oh yeah. So how much do you think it would cost to develop your own brand of protein? Like, because I'm pretty sure you can go farm it out to like mass, production facilities and then slap your own name on it. Do you have any idea, or Bobby, like exactly what that cost looks like up front? And then now we can then compare like how much it costs for each brand.
So protein powders, yeah, because like everyone sells it, it's so cheap. The margin is razor thin on protein powder. And in general, I know a guy who owns a supplement company, and his isn't huge, but he does have some volume. But he says the minimum order to get started, the smallest he was able to find was like $15,000 or something like that.
Oof.
So you're talking about razor thin margins, and 15K is a pretty decent chunk if you ask me. So yeah, there you go.
I was thinking you probably make a lot more money just making your own like blended like pre-workouts or something like that. That's probably a lot easier to make because I used to do that back in, like when I was younger. I used to make my own pre-workouts, like buying bulk like creatine, caffeine, like beta alanine, and just mixing it all together and just drinking that.
I wonder like how many like protein companies out there and supplement companies are getting their stuff from the exact same like distribution warehouses that have all of the raw materials. So if, you know, whether GNC is exclusively, selling to GNC and they have their own, production facility, or, whether Jim and all of these other supplement companies are the exact same products, but they just get wrapped at their own, sorting houses.
I think that's probably pretty accurate as far as like all the protein comes from like a couple of large producers, then that just gets like subdivided down into individual like, and then labels get packed on and they get branded. But it's all like the same thing.
Yeah, I know Optimum, Diametize. I think there's one more. I want to say Muscle Farm, but I'm not sure about the third one. But those are the two big ones in the game. They get theirs from the same the same supplier. I can't remember the name. I want to say Europa Sports, but I feel like I'm getting that mixed up with something else. They might just be a wholesaler. I don't know, but yeah, I know Optimum and Dymatize get it from the same source, and they're like the two biggest players.
And I think that's really important to bring up because, like you were mentioning, whey protein good, like, but for performance reasons, I think then you see the difference in the marketing. So a lot of these companies will put a jacked individual on the front, and what you're saying is, hey, that is not indicative of the product that they're taking right then and there. It's not this protein is going to make you look like it. But I think we've been so like climatized to that kind of thinking or that rationalization, putting two and two together, that people expect if I take X, Y, or Z protein, I'm going to look like this, when we don't know what other supplements these people are taking.
Yeah, yeah, that happens a lot. I can guarantee you they did not get that way from whatever any legal ergogenic aid that's being advertised. So that definitely goes without saying. But people fall for that all the time, and especially people that are desperate. They'll, it's kind of like quackery. So, but yeah, that's just it's not an accurate representation at all of what they're actually taking. And most of the times, uh, like they're probably, I don't want to make a blanket statement here, but they're probably on steroids. That is just the reality,
Oh yeah,
or
but if you call that out online, like the comments section blows up with, "You're just jealous. You haven't put in the hard work. This person is working their tail off. I hope they really like my comment that I've left here. I need the follows." Or, like, "Oh, you're just salty because," I mean, you saw it. We talked about it for a long time now. The CrossFit Games athletes. Oh, they're regularly tested. And they've got their diets really dialed in, and they are working out for 5, 6, 7 hours a day. So, like, maybe that's a big factor. But a lot of times I don't think that we should be able to sit here and say, like, maybe this person's on it, but I think making these general statements definitely has some valid critiques of the industry, when you've got medical experts, we got dietitians, nutritionists, all saying, like, this is really difficult to get this way on just the basics of focusing on your macronutrition and then A or B supplement.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You have some of those guys that are, advertising these products. Um, it's questionable whether that's even like if that's attainable natural, so what they currently look like. So, I mean, you can't go around testing everyone, and like, there's no way to know for sure. But even if they are natural, they probably have pretty darn good genetics, and that just doesn't apply to everyone who sees the advertisement. So that's just also, something to consider. Not to say that you shouldn't try if you don't have this genetics or anything, but it's just being realistic.
Yeah, so like it's probably like a good portion of that comes from like the Instagram like influencers or social media like sphere where pay like you get like 1 million followers and you look super jacked or look super good with your shirt off or in a bikini. And then you can just push products that are like the fit teas or like the proteins or what have you to the people, or like fat burners or what have you. The people that just, one, don't know any better, and two, see like this really jacked or really pretty person and they just want to be like that. So
Yeah, the
I'd
worst
always
one
I'd
is
always question that kind of thing, though, because I feel like a lot of I definitely on the male side of the house, when you go to like their Instagrams, it's like their first supplement company that's a sponsor, then it's usually like a clothing company, and then maybe like a gym that they adhere to the workouts from. And then for the female influencers out there, it's like number one is always some sort of a company that makes high-waisted spandex, um, because it's like that's what draws people in now to identifying and distinguishing like the thin waist, the hips, the quads. Like that is the faddish culture now for gym attire. And then it's like, okay, and I'm taking this fat burner, which is, for me, it's confusing because you're like, well, you can't be that shapely, or you can't have that shape and have 0% fat. So it's like I think it's like almost like the hypocrisy that you see on social media, but people don't read between the lines there and say you can't have one without the other.
yeah, yeah. So like, it is yeah, but yeah. So sorry, I just kind of missed what you said, but
It wasn't scientific at all. I'm
No.
sorry. I'm I'm swimming in the deep end.
Yeah, it's like as far as like fat burners go, I remember what is it like the one phosphate that's like the organophosphate that's like the like what is it like there's like no such thing as a fat burner because anything that increases your fat burning is it essentially increase your metabolism and then like what is it there's like this one like organophosphate that people used to like bodybuilders used to take as a fat burner that would kill you because it essentially stopped like oxidative phosphorylation. You know what I'm talking about, James?
You're not talking about 1,3, no?
I think yeah, 1,3 dimethyl, whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know about killing people. I think it may like one or two, man. It may be like one or two people may have died from it. But yeah, 1,3 is that's like if in the original jacked
Oh no,
format.
no, no, I'm talking about something different. But yeah, the 1,3, yeah, that's just meth.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like it's really similar, like molecularly. If you were to take two pictures of the molecules, it's pretty similar to it. But and then there's also like ephedrine. But fat burners in general, if you're talking about like so back to the if you're talking about like legal ones, the top players in the game would be like Yohimbe, Synephrine, and the ones I'll just sum it up here. The ones that have shown a benefit. Oh, caffeine is another one, obviously. The ones that have shown a benefit, aside from caffeine, have really bad side effects. And I'm mostly talking about Yohimbe and Synephrine here, mostly having to do with just like heart palpitations, anxiety. Yohimbe could give you a boner that lasts for like a couple days too. That's something that's not ideal for some people, I guess.
How much do you have to take for that?
Yohimbe. Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's in milligrams. It's probably like 10, 20 milligrams or something like that. But yeah, and then there is caffeine, but caffeine is actually a pretty effective fat loss supplement when you look at it increases metabolic rate just a tiny bit, and it blunts appetite really nicely. So those two things can go a long way. The increase in metabolic rate, not as much because it's only like it's like 10% or not even 10%. It's very small. But the blunting the appetite is a big one. I think it's really helpful for that. And then the other ones, like Garcinia cambogia, raspberry ketones, those are all pretty much garbage, found useless. And then there's xanthogen, which is brown seaweed extract. Interestingly, that actually it's probably one that not many people have heard of, but there are a few studies not funded by the supplement companies, just yeah, not funded by the supplement companies that make it, which is really common in the supplement industry. Actually found that this was middle-aged women who ate at maintenance calories ended up losing like a significant amount of weight after like 16 weeks. I can't remember. It was like 10, 15 pounds, I think. And that was found in a couple different studies. It was replicated a few different times. But that's one that's kind of like a hidden gem. I haven't tried it, but I think that was really interesting.
What could increase your metabolism? Because like caffeine to a slight degree, you were saying, but like Bobby was doing intermittent fasting, and I think one of the benefits of that a while ago that this amateur nutrition reader read was that it helped increase the metabolism. So is that a thing, or what can people do to do that?
So no, fasting doesn't actually increase the metabolism. I think that started from this like really old study back in the 90s. I see it getting cited a lot online by intermittent fasters saying it increases metabolism, but basically they measured energy expenditure through doubly labeled water, which is not accurate. It's outdated, and we have better technology for that now, which is like metabolic chamber. So it was not an accurate reading at all, but it did show it increased metabolism. But no, fasting doesn't actually increase metabolism. In fact, it actually decreases metabolism slightly, and there is some good evidence for that. I actually just saw a review on that the other day. But you're asking what might increase metabolism. Well, there's actually one thing that does for sure, and that's eating more calories actually increases metabolism. So same with like gaining weight. If you gain weight, your energy expenditure is going to increase. So there's like a economic theory called like the real wealth effect, and it's basically simply stating that If you are making more money, you're going to spend more money. If you're making less money, you're going to spend less money. Well, your body does the same thing with energy expenditure. So if you feed it more calories, it's going to be more wasteful with energy. If you go on a diet, you cut calories, it's going to conserve more energy. It's going to be more energy efficient. So same thing happens there with the body. So the only real way you could actually speed up your metabolism is really just by eating more calories or gaining weight. That's really the only way around it.
Yeah, it's like I think that's the common thing. It's like the best way to like lose or increase your metabolism is just to increase your lean body mass.
Yeah.
Like the bigger you are, like the more muscle mass you have, the more your resting metabolic rate increases.
Yeah, I will say that is true, but it's not as much as you think. So I think per pound of muscle, not just lean body mass, but I mean like pure tissue, muscle tissue, it's not a lot of calories. It's like 20 calories per day or something like that per pound. So if it's not really going to make a huge difference in the short term, maybe over like years, or if you just start training and you train for like 6 to 8 months and you gain like 10 pounds of muscle, it'll make a difference. But yeah, increasing lean body mass is a way. It's just not as much as you would hope.
So you were mentioning like you could, someone could eat anything essentially and fill their macros, or, find a way to satisfy what they need to eat for a day. Like very simply, I'm putting that. But is there like a food that you're like, never, ever, ever eat this food again? Like, don't ever consume Ben and Jerry's. I hope that's not a thing you say, but like, is there something, of a same equivalent standard?
Yeah, there's just it's one food that would be margarine probably. Uh,
Hmm.
Is that
because
butter?
margarine is illegal now to sell in grocery stores. So
Really?
trans fat in general,
Oh, trans fats.
starting 20, not margarine specifically, but trans fat. So you can't sell trans fat in grocery stores because
The
it's
name.
so bad for you. It should be that way. So but the reason I single out margarine is because you could simply use butter, which is not the greatest, but it's still a lot better than margarine. But I wouldn't single out trans fat completely, because I still think you could fit in like a donut, which has trans fat, or like a cake here and there and still be fine. But if you're just using a pure trans fat source, and just when there's like another, uh, better substitute, then I just think that that's kind of silly, because you could just use olive oil or something else that's way better for you. But margarine is like the only food that I would think I just see no point in it, because it's so bad for you and there's another better substitute for it.
How do you feel about the whole vegetable oil debate? Because that's like a new thing about people that rail against like canola oil or like soybean oil instead of
Coconut
like your other.
oil.
Yeah,
Yeah, so like it's because they think it causes like inflammation, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't seen any like real evidence for that. But in general, like vegetable oils are a hell of a lot better than like solid fats. So like, like your meat fats, or like your saturated fats, or your trans fat. But I don't think that vegetable oils are bad for you. In fact, I think that it could be beneficial if you're substituting them with, worse solid fat sources. But until like, yeah, so until I see some hard evidence that, there's like C-reactive protein goes up from vegetable oil consumption, then like, yeah, I'm not going to hop on that train yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know in like the in like some of the textbooks I've read as far as like omega-3s versus omega-6s, and like omega-3s are inherently a little more inflammatory than omega-6s, and then I know like a lot of the vegetable oils are higher in omega-3 fatty acids versus omega-6s, and that like imbalance can cause an inflammatory state. That's like theoretical that but like I said, I haven't seen any studies that actually show that like vegetable based omega-3 high fat or high omega-3s would cause um like inflammatory states.
So the
Yeah, I think that comes from like the paleo crowd. They tend to be really paranoid against inflammation, which isn't like inflammation isn't even like inherently bad. You still need some, and like that happens from weight training too. So you're gonna just stop weight training too because it causes
Yes.
inflammation. So
So if we have to go like grocery shopping, and I'm walking down the oil section because I like to, saute vegetables or, like put something down for the meat. Do you have like a rank order of vegetable oil, olive oil, canola oil, coconut oil? Is there such a ranking system for you, or do you have recommendations for people that just want to saute vegetables over, one oil over the other?
Not really. I would say olive and canola would probably be the better options. Coconut would be more neutral because that's been shown to, I think it's been shown to raise HDL, but also raises LDL cholesterol. But the other oils, like, or sorry, specifically olive and canola oil, have been found to specifically lower LDL when replacing, keyword replacing, with like other solid fat sources like, animal fats or whatever. So I would just say if you want to, I mean, but again, it's probably not going to make a huge difference at the end of the day. If you're replacing solid fats sources like saturated fat with, any vegetable-based oil, you'll probably see that benefit. If you want to be sure, just probably go olive or canola. Those would be my two recommendations.
I think it's funny that you talk about like these oils are like better for you, and then you have other like carnivore fanatics that say like animal-based oils are better for you, and like the cholesterol doesn't matter. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, let's just take it to the extreme.
yeah, because like who is it? The one carnivore, what was his
John
name?
Baker.
Yeah, Sean Baker like does like his blood work and his like cholesterol's like in the 300s. But he said that's good because he's high in cholesterol. And it's like better, but he doesn't have any heart like cardiovascular diseases. But I'm just like, I wonder if that maybe the root cause of all this issue is like inflammation. Like, because I think eating a carnivore diet, I imagine, isn't super inflammatory. But I don't really know. Like, I think that's kind of where the new um, research is kind of shifting is like towards inflammation and figuring out ways to reduce inflammation in your diet.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that is where we're headed.
Yeah, because I think like your processed foods, your sugars, your like highly processed food and starches, all like super inflammatory. So I think that is kind of where a lot of the trends are going in terms of like figuring out optimum health is like minimizing dietary inflammation,
Yeah.
which is why I
So
think omega sixes.
like we talk about animal fat, would you recommend like people can, again, eating within that umbrella of your macros and, generally tracking everything you have to consume, would you still say like eating regular bacon is fine, or would you like say go to turkey bacon? I mean, these are all like very generic, and I know everyone's, individually, programmed, but are there certain kind of like major macro food groups that you would recommend more over others?
Yeah. So basically, I'll put it like this: if uh, the main drivers in health are like the healthy habits you have, and that's mainly driven by four habits. And this is kind of like backed by research. Those four habits, they don't relate to diet as much as you would think, but it does a little bit. So it's eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, not drinking alcohol, not smoking, and exercising. And then a fifth bonus one that I throw in on top is maintaining a healthy weight. But actually, interestingly, they find that people with those four healthy habits have the same mortality rates regardless of their body weight. So if you have those four healthy habits and you're overweight, you actually live just as long apparently. But anyways, so yeah, if you're a healthy weight and you have all those four of those things, you could probably just run with the rule of practicing moderation and fitting just about anything in your diet, and then tapering the quantities to your goals. So like, if you could probably eat some bacon, but make it two slices because you're trying to lose weight and you can't overdo the calories.
Two
Um,
bacon's not going to work for me, man. I'm a four slice guy.
but yeah, I think the issue is what defines like moderation or balance. And I think a good rule for that would be like the 80-20 rule. So if you're tracking calories, 20% of your calories, they call it discretionary energy, which is like calories you could use for the fun foods like cake or pizza or whatever. And
Yeah.
the 80% of that food, again, it's hard to have definitions here. I don't want to say the word clean because everyone's definition of clean is different and it's kind of like a nebulous term. But I would say, I guess, whole, minimally processed foods would be, I guess, better. So yeah, if you follow an 80-20 rule is pretty much what I would consider the gold standard for moderation and balance. So if you have those 4 healthy habits, you could just practice an 80-20 rule, taper your quantities towards whatever your goal is, and then you'll probably be fine running with that.
Yeah, like tonight, Super Bowl Sunday, I'm for sure eating a bunch of pizza and wings. So, it's my one day of
That's
the
your
week.
20% right there.
20%. But I
What
also
about
like,
alcohol? You mentioned alcohol though. What kind of detrimental effect does that have on like planning out your healthy eating for a week? Because you'll have people say, "Oh, I only, I cheat one day a week. I have a cheat meal." Does that really throw off significantly any gains that you've made, quote unquote, or is there a healthy way to consume alcohol, considering a dietary goal?
Yeah, so if you're talking about fat loss, one cheat day can literally undo a whole week's worth of progress. And I've seen people do this where they will have like maybe a 500-calorie deficit for like, 5-6 days of the week, and then they have one binge day where they eat like probably it doesn't go tracked. I'm telling you that right now. They don't track it, but if you were to track it, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up, 4 or 5,000 calories. So if your goal is fat loss, you could easily undo a whole week's worth of a deficit with just one bad day of like junk food and alcohol. In terms of gains, though, you can actually, if you practice moderation with alcohol, as long as you're not getting drunk, you could still make decent gains. Like if you're bulking, you're trying to put on muscle. And actually, it wouldn't be bad because alcohol does stimulate appetite a little bit. It could help you get in more calories. But yeah, if you're getting drunk though, then that can definitely impair recovery. It'll also impair fat loss because your body has to burn off the alcohol before it does any fat oxidation. So if you're trying to gain, you could probably fit in like moderate amounts of alcohol. Again, it's all about moderation here. Like 1 to 2, you're talking like 2 to 3 drinks for men, 1 to 2 for females on any given day. And then, but if your goal is fat loss and you want to fit in alcohol, it's a lot harder because, like I said, alcohol does stimulate your appetite. You're less on your guard, so you're more likely to be like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna fit in this pizza and I'm not gonna worry about it. You're not gonna give a shit as much basically, so you're more likely to just ruin your diet if you're getting plastered. So basically, the moral of the story here is just don't get plastered. Even if your goal is fat loss, you could still probably fit in like 1 or 2 Trulies, unless you're like a really small female that's on like a 1,000 calorie diet. It would be harder then. But so yeah, if your goal is fat loss, or if your goal is any goal, you should just, or sorry, let me back up. If your goal is fat loss, I would just keep it out just to be safe completely. Um, at the most, like moderate amounts, like 1 to 3 drinks maybe. If you're trying to bulk, you could definitely fit it in. Probably like like I said earlier, 2 to 3 drinks for men, 1 to 2 for women on any given day, and it could be helpful for just getting in extra calories. So, but moderation really is the key. That's kind of like the best advice that I could give for when it comes to consuming anything, basically.
That's great.
yeah, so I probably prefer a little bit of red wine over other alcohol. I guess you could do like clear alcohols, like clear liquors, and then red wine would be my preferred way to get some of the phytonutrients.
Antioxidants, I believe, is in red wine.
Yeah.
Correct.
Look at that. Look. I brought science to the table. Okay, guys.
Yeah, and I think even red wine. So when they study the Mediterranean diet, one of the, I guess, rules or whatever of the Mediterranean diet is to consume some red wine in moderation. And so when they study the Mediterranean diet, they instruct the people to consume some red wine in moderation, and they actually attribute that to part of the benefits of the cardiovascular health from the Mediterranean diet is just that little bit of red wine here and there. So I guess if you're gonna drink, make it red wine.
It's that resveratrol.
Resveratrol.
Antioxidants.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's interesting that if use. I mean, I think that's a good dynamic point that I can want to bring up. Is like eating versus performance, eating versus health, and then like eating versus wellness. I think those are all like different goals, and I think that I think people kind of can blur the lines between the different goals of eating. But like eating for performance and physical performance is going to be completely different than eating for like longevity and health. like eating for performance, like you're gonna be eating the same thing over and over again. You probably aren't getting as like high nutrient dense foods in, probably debatable, but eating for health and longevity is gonna be different than how you would eat for like to work out for 3 hours or 4 hours a day.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
I agree.
some of that goes back though to like people just don't know what they're training for. Like you've got no idea when you step onto the scale what are your goals. You'll get people that are like, I'm going to do a 3 month bulk because it's beach season, and they're just like the entire year is just this like roller coaster, and so there's no consistency whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that's one issue is a lot of people will, I guess the term is like spin their wheels, hopping back from bulk to cut because they can't decide, or they bulk too hard, they go all out, and then like, oh, I gained too much fat, so I got to cut now. Um, I think the majority of the time, I think if you're debating whether you should bulk or cut, I almost feel like I could answer this without knowing anything. And sometimes I just feel like the answer is just to bulk. And by probability, that could potentially be right, because you should be spending more time bulking than cutting automatically, like by default. Everybody should be. Unless you're now obviously unless your starting point is like super obese or something. But if you're starting at a normal health point, then you should be spending more time bulking than cutting. It should be like probably, I would say 8 months bulking to 4 months cutting throughout the year. That would probably be ideal for, again, it is a little bit dependent on where the person starts, but that wouldn't be a bad recommendation at all, in my opinion. You should definitely be spending more time bulking than cutting, because you need to gain, you need to, in order to put on muscle, you need to be in a surplus. So, and cutting, it doesn't take that long if you bulk properly. So, yeah.
Yeah, so like for me personally, I think shifted away from like a bulking or like cutting mentality and more of like a maintenance or eating to, sustain what I like to do versus anything else. I've become more of a big fan of like kind of intuitive eating and just being able to, control and kind of eat what I think I need to eat for the day to maintain like my energy levels and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I'm also I've done some research into like the blue zone diets and kind of the blue zones, because that's kind of interesting to me, is like maximizing your health and longevity, which I think is a little bit different than how we're taught nutrition wise to like maximize performance. Like the blue zone diets, James.
Isn't that like, is that where they have a list of like yes foods and no foods kind of thing, like good foods and bad foods kind of?
No, like the blue zone is like these are the areas in the world where people have like a high proportion of like they live like 100 years old. It's like places like I think like Sardinia in Italy, Okinawa in Japan, someplace in California because like a Seventh-day Adventists. But pretty much like there's a lot more. There's some research into like longevity and long-term health, and that in order to maximize like your life, essentially you're supposed to eat like minimally processed foods high in like a diet high in like plants and vegetables and fruit, low in like meat product, like animal products, higher in like fish products, and like eat at a slight caloric deficit throughout your life or something like that, and that all increases like your longevity.
Yeah, those all sound good to me. The big one would be for me would be the minimize animal products and maximize like fruit and veggie consumption and whole grains too. Those would be the two big ones. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing where these blue zones aren't Philadelphia, Atlanta, Kansas City, um, Dallas, and Austin.
Pretty much your
Like,
standard American diet.
yeah, like you can't have any cheesesteaks, is what I'm hearing. Sorry, Jims.
But it's all moderation. I think it's like if you get too tied in or too fanatical about your diet and nutrition, I think you pay for that in psychological health and mental well-being.
Oh, I've got a quick question for James. So, like, we're talking about the bulking phase, right? And we'll see like a lot of celebrities, like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, personal hero of mine, Chris Hemsworth, all of these actors, they make it seem like really simple. Like The Rock will post that he's just consumed like 35 pancakes. Um, if people look at that, what should we also be taking into consideration? Like, is there some diet that we're not seeing them do throughout the week?
Steroids. That's what you
Yeah,
don't see them doing.
that's a big one. The Rock is, if I had to guess, I would say so. I like to think I'm decent at calling out gear users, but for The Rock, it's obvious, obviously. But
Obvious that he works hard. Hard work pays off. Hypothetically speaking, if one were to use it, we have to protect ourselves legally.
yeah, but if I had to guess, I would think The Rock is. I think when he was doing Fast and Furious, he was blasting, so he was on like high doses of a whole bunch of different compounds. And I think now, if I had to guess, his physique has went down a little bit. I would have to guess he's cruising. He's on TRT right now, and it's probably because he's getting older too, and he's not doing as many like movies like Fast and Furious. But yeah, so
Like Moana, because he looked huge in Moana.
Isn't that the animation one?
Animation, I think it's real.
Terrible joke. Terrible joke. Continue, James.
Yeah. But the drug use is one, and I'm willing to bet that I don't know what the Rock's diet is, but he doesn't eat like that every day. I've seen his cheat meals. They are ridiculous, and that brings up another interesting point is that if you do that, studies actually show. This is from Brian Bouchard. I actually specifically remember the researcher's name, so you could look this up. Brian Bouchard et al. They actually studied periods of acute overfeeding, so like just overfeeding for like 2 or 3 days at a time, and then returning to baseline, wash them out, and then do it again. So it actually doesn't result in that much fat gain. It results in a large weight spike, but most of it's water weight, and then refilling glycogen too. But the actual fat gain from like, I can't remember, it was like a 1,000 calorie above maintenance is for like 5 days was very low. It was very low. So if you overfeed like just like 1 or 2 days here and there by a lot, it's probably not going to make a huge difference. The real weight gain, the obesity problem we see in America, that's from years of damage of just like overeating hypercaloric or hyperpalatable junk food. But so yeah, if you're doing what The Rock does, if you probably have a good diet, I'm not saying you could lose weight doing this, because like what I said earlier, you could easily undo a diet from one binge day, but you could easily stay in the same shape, having like one all-out day per week, and then being moderate or small deficit the rest of the days of the week. So I think what he does is it's definitely possible, because look at him. But yeah, people also need to consider what the rest of his diet looks like.
Well, but we talk about genetics. So like if, his dad was a physical specimen, was, a wrestler. And when he was like 15 or 16, because he's got a show coming out on NBC, which I'm really excited about. I mean, but he was just a jacked teenager, because I think he was from Allentown, Pennsylvania. But like, so we've got to focus on someone's potential genetics, maybe their age when we consider their metabolism. What are some other things that you think, if people want to mirror, because a lot of these athletes or movie stars have coaches that will write their own program, and people will buy the program from, Chris Hemsworth's strength coach, or train like these individuals. Would you recommend not doing that? Or, what would you recommend when you see these kind of advertisements and look like this guy? Like, does that play maybe a little bit of a factor, like with, a hypertrophy cycle?
Yeah. But the thing is like, that, in my opinion, it doesn't like, just because you're doing what they're doing, it doesn't speak for the quality of the program. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of things go into, someone's impressive physique, and a training program is just one of those things. And it could be a large part, but like you said, genetics, drug use, other things like that also play a huge part. So I think people just need to be aware that like there's more that goes into it than just the training program that they wrote. So it's kind of like appeal to authority, if anyone's familiar with that. Like, something's not legitimate or credible just because it comes from what you would think is like a credible source or something. You have to have more evidence behind it. So I think in general, if people want to find like a good training program, well, first of all, shameless self-plug, Cronus Fit has decent ones. But I think one of the best ways to do it is to either get a coach or learn how to program yourself, because writing up a good training program is so individually dependent, based on like training history, especially mostly based on training history and what you've done in the past. So I think one of the best things you could do for yourself is actually just teach yourself how to do it yourself, so you would be set for life, teach a man to fish kind of thing.
Yeah, we actually had a question about this this last week in the Q&A about like what's the best program between like, all the big, programmers out there. And I think I'm a huge believer in the fact that like the best program is one that you are consistent with. Like all for your programs are going to produce results no matter like what they program for. But the one that produces the best result is a program that you stay consistent with and that you are able to follow like consistently without like quitting too early and just letting it do its course.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
like it's
Similar to
all
diet.
individualized.
Yeah, like we're talking about with diet, how the best diet is just one you could stick to. Same thing applies to training. But I do feel like more people are adherent to training than they are diet. I don't know. That's just kind of like a feeling I have when they're working out, especially the people that are listening. They're more likely to stick to a training program than they are their diet. But that's just a hunch I have.
Yeah, I'll say like for The Rock, I think from what I understand why he does these large cheat meals, that they're like his refeed meals, because I'm pretty sure he eats at like a pretty much a caloric deficit throughout, his week. And then where he's like depleting his glycogen stores, and then he has this huge meal with like high in sugars to replete his glycogen, and also like to pump him up for. 'Cause I think he times it for like his like shooting days where he's like shirtless or something, and that's another like interesting thing that bodybuilders would do is like manipulate like sugars and sodium to like plump up or to buff up for a shoot or something. So
Yeah.
that's like the 1%, like 0.1% of like a normal person's diet, or like just like the minutia.
Yeah, typically they would do like a depletion workout. So
Yeah.
that's like super high reps to deplete glycogen, and it super compensates. But yeah, for me, like I never saw the point of that, because it's all cosmetic and it's temporary.
Oh
Like,
yeah, but that's like, he does it for his shoots, like for
But
his
that's
like
how you get likes. What am I
yeah.
supposed to do?
But that's like I think that's why he does his these like massive cheat meals, because he plumps up for and not like a shirtless shoot or something like that. Like
yeah,
big videos.
Or should be every shoot. I don't if I looked like that dude, I wouldn't maybe I'd wear a Speedo. That'd probably be it.
Yeah, but you'd also be like crushing like testosterone. I think that's another thing that people don't give enough credit to is like the amount of PEDs out there, and especially in the social media and like celebrity world, is like everybody's juiced up to the gills, and that you're lying to yourself if you think you can look like The Rock.
yeah. I think people need to realize that steroids is way more common than, like, I'm talking about your average person who may not be like as much into fitness. I think they they need to realize that steroids is actually like super common, like around gyms. It's just like a lot of people just hop on them. It's not that hard to find them. So and then like obviously celebrities have like kind of like a financial incentive to look better, and so they'll hop on them. A lot of people, athletes will do it too. So it's just a lot more common than you would expect from like a layperson's point of view, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember like I follow some of the like the steroid subreddits on Reddit, and like people that post like progress pictures. I'm like, I don't know why you're using steroids, because you obviously have only been like lifting for like a year. Like your physique is like an amateur at best, but you're like popping on like huge blast doses
Yeah,
of steroids. I'm like, I don't understand why people like hop on steroids without like at least getting to their genetic potential first.
it's
But that's
like
like a
a
whole nother.
ace card, basically. You want to use it as an ace card. Use it when there's nothing left in the tank, and
Yeah.
it boosts you. So yeah, I've seen that a lot too, and it's just like it's almost pointless when you use it when you just start training, because you would have steroid-like gains when you begin training anyways.
Hmm.
So you might as well just do it naturally and then save it for later for when the gains are harder to make.
Yeah, I was like, that's what I said. Like, you should probably reach like your 90% of your genetic potential before you start hitting any PEDs. But for like the vast majority of people listening, it's like you're not going to need PEDs until you're getting to like not that I'm advocating for PEDs, but like you should not need to take PEDs until you are well within your like training maturity and getting to that point of your life where you might need a little boost.
Well, it's just people getting away from like that consistency, wanting to take the shortcut. Like, hey,
Mhm.
how can I max the PT test by just doing bench press. Like you're not going to be able to. You have to do push-ups. You have to do your leg tucks. And we talked about it a little bit, but people taking shortcuts like, oh, if I wear a Whoop strap and I take whey protein, like I know all the secrets. I'm going to be able to like maximize my potential. And then they totally forget anything that James said with like, hey, diet plays such a crucial role. Whoop strap measures like some of the recovery, but you can get a dial in on that, like you were saying, by programming yourself, by figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, also like I was thinking about this the other day. I started lifting weights when I was 12 years old. So I've been like lifting like fitness, been doing fitness, quote unquote fitness for almost 20 years now. So it's like obviously, after doing it for almost 2 decades, I kind of know how my body works and how to program and how to do all these things. But like if you're just starting out, like there's no, you just have to put the time and the effort in. There's no shortcuts to like getting to peak physical performance. There's no shortcuts. There's literally years, if not decades, of hard work to like get to a certain point. It's like most people, I think, when they get join the military, they like, they think that they'll be like like peak physical condition, but like I don't even consider like someone to be an intermediate, physically intermediate until they're like at least 5 training years in. You're so beginner until like probably year 3 or 4, and then after year 3 or 4 of training, of like decent and consistent training, that I would consider someone to be like a intermediate, to be like intermediate physical fitness.
Yeah, it heavily depends on how they spent their time training and eating. Because like
Sure.
I've seen people in the gym who, are like middle-aged people who are like, oh yeah, I've been training for like 20 years, but it doesn't even look like they've ever touched a weight in their life. So
Mm-hmm.
it depends on how you spend that time. But the good news is if you didn't spend that time, doing things optimally or very well, um, it's not like you missed out on those gains. If you just start doing things better, eating more protein, training more consistently, things like that, getting enough sleep. Once you start doing it, like you will make up for the gains you missed out. So it's not like you missed this window of opportunity, which I've talked to some people and they kind of tend to think that, like they missed their new gains or whatever. It's still there. It depends on how much progress you've made, and you could always make it up later. So yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
one of the big things with like CrossFit, though, why people were so invested in it early, because you'd hear so many stories of, I've only been doing CrossFit for a year and I made the games. I've only been doing CrossFit for 2 years and I'm now at regionals when we used to have them, or, I've qualified for all these things. But then now you see the only people that are making the games are the ones that have been in it for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, of consistently doing these exercises. You've got to have consistency in your diet, in your fitness, in your recovery. Like you can't just pick and choose randomly and expect to get ahead in, like these really large arenas anymore.
Yep. Anything else you guys want to talk about? We're getting, I would say, we're getting probably to the point where we start wrapping it up for this week.
Um, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. I'll be like, this is, I think, a good plug for James for anybody that's listening still. If you have questions about your nutrition, obviously James is a big resource, a huge resource, and why we kind of brought him onto the team to help out with some nutrition coaching and helping out with you guys to figure out kind of your how to tweak your something that something that you might not be the most versed in. Like we have the training pretty much on the training aspect from programs, but now nutrition is a huge part of training. So if you have any questions about optimizing your training, sign up for the nutrition programming, where you get like one-on-one time with James and can figure out a good program for your way forward.
Yeah, James, dude. So thanks so much for like coming in today and like for everything you've been doing the last couple months, but really dialing it in for like lay people like me who have zero idea when you and Bobby go back and forth on the super technical, but being able to tell me, exactly what I would need to do, it makes a huge difference. Like, huge resource for the Cronus Fit fam.
Yeah, no problem. I love to help. So
Yeah, I say we'll probably do these a little bit more often. I think next time I'll poll the Instagram community to see what other questions people might have for you, and then we'll kind of go back and do some more of these topics that we did today.
yeah, sounds good.
Any other closing comments between you guys?
I'll just throw my email out there. It's james@cronusfit.org. So if anyone has questions about the coaching process, or you just questions in general, feel free to email me.
Yeah. If you go on the website under the contact us, James is, I believe, on there as well. If you can't remember, James@cronusfit.org.
It's James with an apostrophe, right?
Yeah.
All right. With that, guys, appreciate you guys sitting through this week. And we will catch up with you guys next week.
Peace.
Later, guys.